Today we're making the Petal Bloomers pattern. I love this pattern. It is so cute. There are actually two different ways to do this pattern. On the left are the traditional Petal Bloomers. On the right is the high cut leg. And no matter which one you choose to do, we will be completing it together today. I'm going to cut out and sew the high cut leg today, but if you're doing the traditional bloomers, the instructions are still the same. When you're cutting out, the main thing to remember is to do a mirrored cut for the front and back pieces. So flip your pattern piece over before you cut it out. In the end, you'll have your leg elastics, your waist elastic, front and back pieces, and go ahead and iron those and you'll be ready to start sewing. Lay out both back bloomer pieces and then place each front bloomer piece on top of them, right sides together, and everything matching up. Then you're going to sew a straight stitch down both of the back edges, all the way down. Use pinking shears to trim close to that edge to finish the seam, or you can use a serger if you have access to one. Take one of the pieces that you just created and open it up so that the wrong side is facing you. At the very bottom, you're going to turn up the edge 1/4 inch, iron it, and then turn it up 1/4 inch more so that the raw edge is completely hidden. Pin it in place and then sew a straight stitch all the way down that hem. If you would like to add palms or any kind of decorative trim, go ahead and do it to the hem now. Take one of the leg elastic pieces and line it up at the edge of the fabric, about a 1/2 inch above the hem. Use just a few stitches to tack it down in place there. You're not sewing across the whole elastic yet. Then take the other end of the elastic and line it up on the opposite edge and tack it down there. The elastic itself is shorter than the entire fabric put together, so now you will stretch it out and sew it down all the way across. Use a zigzag stitch for this, and I like to first use a few stitches to get it going, and then I stretch out my elastic as far as it can go and hold it in place with my hand as I'm sewing. I use the other hand to guide the fabric and keep moving it through since you're kind of pulling in opposite directions. When you get done, the fabric will be all bunched up around the elastic to create that cute ruffle. Now you'll have two identical bloomer pieces. Fold one of them in half so that right sides are touching, and you'll notice that there is a little bit of a base piece there that has a straight line. Go ahead and sew just that line together to create a seam. When both sides are finished, turn one right side out and place it inside the other piece. So right sides will be touching and all of the lines and seams should line up together. Sew around this V shape that's been created. Okay, now your bloomer is one piece and you can open it up and then turn it right side out. The last thing is to create the waistband, and there are two different methods to go about this. The one I'm going to show you next is best for those that use a serger, But if you don't use a serger or you would just like the simpler version to create the waistband, skip ahead about 3 minutes and you'll find the tutorial for that. Okay, take your waistband elastic and overlap it by 1/2 inch and sew it in place several times so that it is nice and secure. We're going to serge this elastic to the top of our bloomers. So first, line up that overlapped section with the back seam, and then serge it in place just a couple stitches until it is secure. Try not to cut off any of the elastic with the serging knife, just the edge of the fabric. Then you're going to stretch your elastic nearly as far as it can go and continue to serge it on as you are stretching the elastic. So you want the elastic to be stretched, but the fabric not to be stretched. When you get done, it will look like this. The elastic will be right at the edge now at the top, and your serged seam will be all the way around. Then flip the elastic down, and this is how the waistband is created. You're going to sew it in place. So I like to pin it first at all 4 seams. When you sew your waistband down, you'll want to sew along the bottom lip of it, right where that serged edge is. That's what you're wanting to sew down. You can go ahead and add a size tag to it if you want to, and use a stretch stitch for this. A zigzag or a stretch or a twin needle or a cover stitch, that's what I'm using. As you sew, stretch out your elastic and try not to sew over any puckers if you can help it. Try to stretch it as far as it will go and sew over it when it's smooth. And then it will pucker and gather at the end and you'll have the room for it to stretch. All right, you're all done. They are ready to be worn and they look so cute. This is the simple waistband finish and it's perfect for those that don't use a serger. I'm going to show you some video from another bloomer project, but the instructions are the same for the Petal Bloomers. With your bloomers inside out, turn down the waist by 1/4 inch and iron it in place, and then fold it down another 3/4 inches and iron it in place again. That way your raw edge is completely enclosed. Pin it all the way around and then sew a straight stitch around the entire bottom lip, but leave a 2-inch gap so that you can insert your waistband elastic. Attach the waistband elastic to a bodkin or a safety pin and then use that tool to push it through the gap opening. Bunch up your fabric as you're pushing it through and keep the tail end of the elastic out of the gap at all times. Take both ends of the elastic and overlap them by 1/2 inch and then sew this in place, backstitching it several times to make sure that it's really secure. Tuck the elastic now back into the gap opening and then use a straight stitch to close over that gap, trying not to catch any of the elastic when you're sewing. Adjust the gathers so that they're evenly dispersed, and I like to take both side seams in each hand and stretch it as far apart as it will go. This kind of resets the gathers. Then I sew a stitch right there in that seam across the waistband, a stitch in the ditch, so that the elastic won't flip down in the future. And I do this on both sides. Congratulations, you are all done with the Petal Bloomers and they turned out so cute.